All right.
We see that. Just let me
Excellent.
quick introduction about you and the topics, then we can start.
You got it, my friend.
Yeah. Öncelikle the big thanks to you actually, Robert, for us.
My pleasure.
E, Hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Bugün Robert Lincoln'la beraberiz. Kendisi biz yaklaşık uzun zamandır onunla dönem dönem böyle eğitimler yapıyoruz. Yaşlılarda antrenmanla ilgili çalışıyor. Aslında yaş alma insanın doğasında olan bir şey ama nasıl yaşlanacağınız sizin tercihinize kalmış. Mesela kasınız olmadığı zaman hayatta ne meslek ne iş yapıyorsanız yapın. Bu büyük ağırlıklar kaldırmaktan öte bir şey. Yani sizin sisteminizin dayanıklılığının olabilmesi için düzenli olarak belli yüklere maruz kalıyor olmanız lazım. Bunlar büyük ağırlıklarda olması gerekmiyor. Aslında bugün sarkopeniyi konuşacağız ve yaşlarda antrenmanı konuşacağız Robert'la beraber. Bu önümüzdeki 10 yılda toplum yaşlandığı için daha da artacak bir konu. Çünkü Türkiye'de doğurganlık şu an 1,4'e düşmüş. Bu şu demek oluyor. İnsanlar artık yaşlanıyor. 10 yıl sonra yeni trainerlar çıkacak. Biz yaşlılarla antrenman yapıyoruz, yaşlılarla çalışıyoruz diye. Çünkü bu sağlığın en önemli korunma mekanizmalarından bir tanesi. Şimdiden bu konuya önem verilmesi gerekir. Yani bu konuda önce olanlar da ileride bu konuda çok daha söz sahibi olur. O yüzden katılanlar çok şanslı. Ben hepinize iyi webinarlar diliyorum. Mahsum fizyoterapist arkadaşımız Valt'tan. O da çeviride bize yardımcı olacak. We can start, Robert.
Good to go? All right, my friend. Thank you, Masum.
Yes.
Good to see you, my friend. Ready to
Okay.
rock?
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you for being here, everybody. I'm excited to spend some time with you, share with you. Today, we're going to talk about the downfall of older adults and how losing strength ultimately leads to their frailty, that ultimately leads to a fall that ends with catastrophic injury, and how to overcome all that.
Herkese merhabalar. Bugünkü konumuz aslında yaşlı bireylerdeki çöküşe bakacağız. Burada da onların belli süreçler içerisinde nasıl düşme durumların gibi durumlarda ne gibi büyük sakatlıkların meydana geldiğinden bahsedeceğiz ve bunları ele alacağız.
Ingen already did a good job of introducing me, but just so you know, I've got a little over 25 years of experience in this field. My entire profession is dedicated to working with older populations and educating other coaches, personal trainers, physical therapists on how to age strong and avoid injury and hopefully maximize our older, later years in life as best as we can.
Engin beni tanıttı zaten ama ben de kendimi kısaca tanıtacak olursam 25 senedirden fazladır bu alanda çalışıyorum ve genellikle yaşlılarla beraber çalışıyorum. Yaşlılar üzerine çalışıyorum. Aynı zamanda bu konularla alakalı koçlara ve eğitmenlere çeşitli eğitimler veriyorum.
Our agenda today, I want to break down basically two words for you that lead to a third that more or less encompass our whole style of training. It starts with dynapenia, how that leads to potentiopenia, ultimately creating sarcopenia, and then falls and injuries.
Bugünkü konu başlıklarımıza bakacak olursak aslında araştırmalar dahilinde çeşitli başlıklarımız olacak. Bunlar dynapenia ve potentiopenia ile beraber ondan sonra bu olayın nasıl sarkopeniye dönüştüğü ve sarkopeninin de düşmelere nasıl sebep olduğuna bakacağız.
We're going to define each one of these, talk about the research that supports each one, and then we'll give you some examples, show you some videos, and I'm going to do some demonstrations here for you as well, along with how we can do an assessment to see if our clients do have this.
Bunlara bakacağız. Bunlarla ilgili yapılan araştırmalara bakacağız ve bunları tartışıp örneklerine beraberinde ben de bir şeyler göstereceğim size burada ve değerlendirmeleri nasıl yapacağımızı birlikte bakacağız.
All right, first up is defining dynapenia. Dynapenia is a Greek translation word for poverty of strength. Basically, it's the loss of muscular strength due to deconditioning and the lack of use, even though most definitions will just say it's age related. But I don't believe that it is.
İlk bakacağımız kavram Dynapeni kavramı. Bu aslında Yunanca'dan çevrilen bir kavram. Anlamına bakacak olursak kuvvet kaybı, kuvvet yokluğu anlamına geliyor. Ve kondisyon yokluğu veya işte var olan kas kuvvetini kullanamama. Çoğu araştırmalar bunu yaşla alakalı der ama ben ona katılmıyorum.
Dynapenia is going to be a direct effect of muscular loss and effort through decreasing type 1 muscle fibers, how efficient they are, how strong they can contract. And that ultimately reduces strength, it reduces stability, it reduces muscular endurance and balance. And this is more or less the foundation in which the onset of frailty starts to begin.
Yani çeşitli bu durumun azalmasına yani kuvvetin azalmasına sebep olan belli faktörler var. Bu faktörlere bakacak olursak kas fibrilerinin azalması, kas kuvvetinin stabilitesinin azalması, denge ve dayanıklılığın azalması bunların da beraberinde bu durumu meydana getirebiliyor.
You can see in the image here on the right, it says dynapenia is poverty of the poverty of the muscle strength power as a age-associated loss with muscular strength. Naturally, we are going to have some decline in our abilities as we age. But to simply say that this is going to happen no matter what, just because we're getting older, is where I disagree in terms of catastrophic drop or massive drop in our abilities.
Buradaki yayında yazıldığı gibi Dynapeni kas kuvvetinin azalması ve bu kas kuvvetinin de yaşla ilişkili olarak azalması anlamına geliyor şeklinde yazmışlar. Burada katılmadığım şey yani yaşlanıyorsunuz diye kas kuvvetinize veya vücudunuzda ciddi ekstrem bir kaybın olabileceği anlamı taşımaması lazım.
Dynapenia is a diagnosable disease, but it is not a neurological disease, meaning it's not hereditary, it's not contagious. This is something that by lack of use and deconditioning is a default of the body to result in.
Bu nörolojik tabanlı bir rahatsızlık değil. Bu kas hastalıklarından kaynaklı bir rahatsızlık değil veya işte bulaşıcı genetik olarak aktarılabilen bir durum söz konusu değildir.
Now, as we continue to possibly diagnose a client with dynapenia, let's keep in mind it's not our job to diagnose them with anything. However, when we're doing our screening process, it is important for us to recognize what we're seeing in this screen is a result of deconditioning or no use, and this leads us ultimately to understanding our client is dynapenic.
Burada aslında Dynapenia'ya bakacak olursak tabii ki bunun tanısını biz koyamıyoruz. Bu bizim alanımız değil, işimiz değil. Ama belli noktalarda bakıp bir kişinin nasıl dynapenik olup olmadığını anlayabiliriz.
We're going to go through each one of these screening processes in just a few minutes. I've got it all set up. We'll be able to go through that, but I just want to give you all of the options that we like to use in-house, starting with grip strength using the dynamometer, and then progressing on to 2 sit-to-stands assessments, where one for 30 seconds and another one for 5 rep maxes.
Burada kullanabileceğimiz bazı testlemeleri beraber de bakabiliriz. Bunlardan birisi el kavrama kuvveti dinamometre ile. İkincisi de zamana karşı oturmadan ayağa kalkma skoru. Bu da 30 saniyelik bir süre içerisinde belli bir ortalama skor isteniliyor.
Then we move on to the timed up and go tug. Again, we'll review that in a moment. We will ask the client if they can perform a 10-pound or 4 kilo deadlift. And if they can lower themselves down into the kneeling position and return to standing. Those are two of the more important protocols for us to simply ask the client first if they're comfortable performing and then allowing them the opportunity to demonstrate it.
Ve bir diğer testimiz tak testi. E, ikinci testimiz kişinin 10 poundluk bir ağırlığa karşı deadlift yapabiliyor olması. Bir diğeri de kişinin dizüstü çöküp tekrardan oturabilme pozisyonuna tekrardan ayağa kalkma pozisyonuna gelebilmesi.
And then how do we improve dynapenia once we recognize, yes, our client has this? We want regular exercise on a daily basis. We ask that our clients get 225 minutes per week of exercise, daily activity, ultimately resulting in about 32 minutes every day.
Peki bir kişinin dynapenik olduğunu anladıktan sonra bu durumu nasıl pozitife çekebiliriz? Kişinin tabii ki burada egzersizleri düzenli olarak yapması lazım. Burada 225 dakikalık bir haftalık kotamız var. Bu da yaklaşık günde 32 dakikalık egzersiz seansı demek oluyor.
And of course, the primary component to those exercise hours are going to be focused on resistance training, progressive resistance training, high intensity resistance training, anything that's going to challenge our client with a progressive overload that allows their body to specifically adapt to the imposed demands. That is your SAID principle in effect.
Yani burada oluşturacağımız prensipler aslında kişiyi biraz daha zorlayıcı şekilde çalıştırma amaçlı olacak. Bunun için direnç egzersizleri. Bu direnç egzersizlerin progresif olarak ilerlemesi ve zorlanması lazım. Yani progresif overload'a sahip olması lazım. Aynı zamanda high intensity dediğimiz yüksek intensiteli de olabilir. Tamamen kişiyi zorlayıcı bir aktivite içermesi lazım.
And when we get done with the presentation today, I will send all the slides over to you, so you can send it out to all the attendees. But you'll notice at the bottom of each slide, I have the link there for you to be able to reference these articles.
Sunum sonrası slaytları göndereceğim. Kendileri sizlerle paylaşacaktır. Ama her slaytta belli yerlerde referanslarımı görebilirsiniz en altta.
All right. One of our first assessments that you'll see is the sit to stand. We will introduce this to a client with body weight to start off, and then eventually progress this with load.
İlk değerlendirme şeklimiz kutu üzerine oturmadan ayağa kalkma pozisyonu. Bu vücut ağırlığıyla veya herhangi bir yükle beraber olabilir.
This becomes one of our most useful, one of my favorite exercises to program in pretty much every workout that we get a client in-house. They've got 168 hours in a week. I get them for 2, and I need to be able to select exercises that are going to give them the best return for their time invested.
Ve 168 saatlik olan bir hafta içerisinde ev egzersizi olarak hemen hemen her yaşlı hastama verdiğim egzersizlerden birisi. En çok kullandığım egzersiz yapılarından birisi.
Other than general locomotion of walking, the breaking of the hip, the hinging of the hip into a seated position or a deadlifting position is the most common movement performed on a daily basis per hour, averaging around 11 reps for the average individual. This can be picking up a weight to bending over, picking up your wallet or your keys, picking up mail that's been delivered. We do this movement so regularly throughout our day that we definitely want to feature this as a key lift in our regular programming.
Yani gün içerisinde nasıl yürümeyi o kadar sık yapıyorsak aynı zamanda pelvisin öne doğru eğilmesi, hinge paterni dediğimiz paternde deadlift'e benzer hareketleri gün içerisinde en sık yaptığımız hareket paternlerinden birisi oluyor. Bu yerden bir ağırlık kaldırmak olabiliyor, yerdeki cüzdanınızı almak olabiliyor, Yani aşağı yukarı günde 10-11 defa bu yaşlar bunu yapabiliyor. Ortalama tabii ki.
There's two rules that we have to this lift that we really want to encourage our clients to do every single time is when they sit down, they have to sit down to a completely unloaded position, meaning the box or the chair is taking their weight. Second is they have to fully stand up, a complete lockout of the hip, the knee, the ankle, all the way into that triple extended position.
İki tane kuralımız var. Kurallardan birisi kişinin tamamen oturması ve otururken herhangi bir yük taşımaması. Yani altında sandalye veya box varsa bütün vücut ağırlığını o oturduğu yapının alması. İkincisi de ayağa kalktığında tamamen triple extension pozisyonda dediğimiz diz, kalça ve ayak bileklerinin artık kilitli olması.
The holding position where we place the load is pretty key and important as well. You have multiple options. Holding in the goblet at heart height. You can shoulder sling over right or left shoulder, or you could hold the weight down low between the knees. Any of those selections based on what limitations the client might have will dictate which one of those we are going to utilize.
Burada ağırlık tutma pozisyonu da önemli. Dizler etrafında da tutabilir kişi bu şekilde veya göğüs seviyesinde tutabilir. Aynı zamanda omuzun bir tarafında da tutabilir. Burada tabii ki kişinin limitasyonlarına göre burada belli seçimler yapılabilir.
And then progressing or regressing this lift, we have multiple options. Of course, you can make the weight heavier, you can make the weight lighter. You can increase the height of the box or the depth of the box. And then you can also manipulate the tempo in which each repetition is performed, either coming up quickly, coming down slow, or vice versa.
Progresyon, regresyon da burada çeşitli şekilde yapılabilir. Ağırlık miktarı artırılabilir, azaltılabilir. Oturulan box'ın seviyesi yükseltilebilir, indirilebilir. Veya işte kaldıran ağırlığın hızı artırılabilir, azaltılabilir.
When we do the general assessment, I'm looking just to see if the client can perform this and if they pass their scores, but we're not looking at technique necessarily to make any improvements. At this point, I simply want to see what the client can do.
Bu seviyede aslında kişinin tam olarak ne yapacağı benim için daha önemli. Yani tekniğe falan çok fazla odaklanmıyorum. Kişinin potansiyel olarak ne yapabileceği veya ne yaptığı daha önemli benim için.
As they improve and we start to, let me get my draw here. As we start to improve and they are able to add more load, we can start to focus more on their technique and how they are performing the lifts that they're doing. Namely, oh, that's in red, hold on. Let me go blue here. Namely, the postures in which their back and their hips and their knees are all going to maintain.
Ve tabii ki burada belli bir pozisyonları yakaladıktan sonra kişinin buradaki postüral seviyesini koruyabilmesi benim için önemli oluyor. Burada da sırt, diz ve kalça oluyor tabii ki.
And between the back posture and the hip, these are two key areas we want to feature. Second being the hip here and making sure you'll see the displacement in her hip here starts to shift. And this shows us as she progresses in this, she has some weakness from one hip to the next. Everybody see that shift right there? See that little shift as she starts up there over to her dominant side. And you'll see that repeated with each repetition.
Burada tabii ki sırtla kalçası arasındaki noktada bu kişinin kalçasına dikkat edecek olursak kalçasında bir shift var ve ağırlık dominant tarafına daha fazla kaçıyor. Bu da aslında bir kalçanın daha kuvvetli olduğunun göstergesi oluyor.
This client's had a hip replacement. She's had 2 knee replacements and struggles to perform this with the load that I've given her. However, progressive improvements to this date now, she's much more efficient. My point is we don't worry too much about nitpicking the technique necessarily, that she's performing the repetition with load, getting herself strong, as strong as we can and pick maybe the one or two primary technical flaws that you see to try to improve.
Ve burada da aslında kişinin iki diz replasmanı ve bir kalça replasman cerrahisi geçirmiş. Burada kişinin daha çok tekniğinden ziyade yapabildiği hareket miktarı bizim için daha önemli oluyor.
Another variation of this is called a rack pull. So these are beyond the assessments now, just some other lifts that we use to help our clients get strong throughout their hips. A rack pull is performed by taking weight off of the floor and replacing it with body weight repetitions in between. Practicing single repetition pickups without a neuromuscular elasticity of the previously loaded rep.
Ve burada da rack pull dediğimiz hareketimiz var. Bu da farklı bir kalçayla yaptıkları bir hareket. Burada ağırlığı yere indirip ondan sonra vücut ağırlığıyla hareketi tamamlayıp tekrardan ağırlığı alıyor.
There is a muscular advantage to keeping your muscles on tension when they move through a range of motion. There's an elasticity, like a slingshot effect that you get in your hamstrings, in your glutes, and the erectors of your spine when you have the load in hand the entire time. But when we set the weight down in between each repetition, you lose that elasticity, taking away power and adding in pure strength, brute strength.
Burada da aslında kaslarınız, elinizde bir ağırlık varsa kaslarınız kendi içerisinde belli bir elastik yapıya, özelliklere sahip oluyor. O ağırlığı indirdiğiniz zaman oradaki elastikiyeti bir ders kaybediyorsunuz. Aslında bunun entegrasyonu üzerine çalışıyor.
As our clients get stronger and we see they start to have better neuromuscular patterning, they're getting the movement down, they're understanding how to perform it safely over and over again, we will progress to touch and go or more dynamic variations where they do have the load in hand on every repetition.
Eğer kişi güçlenirse veya nöromüsküler paterni gelişirse daha dinamik hareketlerle değiştirebiliriz bunu.
And you'll notice at the bottom of each one of these, they still are deloading the weight out of their hands. They're allowing the weight to sit on the floor or the handles to loosen before they re-engage and pull.
Sağ taraftaki videoda ağırlık yere inerken tekrardan tamamen bıraktıklarını, tekrardan ağırlığı bıraktıktan sonra aldıklarını görüyorsunuz.
This is a continued effort on pure brute strength, but truly gives the dead component to deadlift where there is no momentum. It's either pure strength or you don't successfully achieve the lift.
Burada ağırlıkları bırakmaları sebebi aslında tamamen var olan kuvveti kullanabilmek, momentumdan yararlanamamak. Çünkü ağırlığı yere bıraktıkları an o momentumu kaybediyorlar.
There are a couple different variations of tools that you can use to do this with. There are adjustable height implements like this one, where once the weight is on, you can adjust the handle to whatever height you want to pull it from by then replacing the pin at the top. These are 2-inch increments that you can adjust. Another variation is simply using a towel, taking that towel and putting it through a kettlebell. So now I can pull from a height more mid-shin or just above the knee rather than having to get all the way down deep if maybe my body posture does not allow for it.
Az önce elimde gördüğünüz şu cihazın farklı yükseklik seviyeleri var. Ağırlığı içine yerleştirip yüksekliği ona göre ayarlayabiliyorum veya işte havluyu kettlebell'e geçirip bu şekilde hareket yapabiliyorum. Eğer vücudum izin vermiyorsa daha derine inmeme gerek yok. Havlu kullanabilirim.
This also brings in a focus of grip strength, for them to hold on as well. And manipulating the levers can be very valuable for clients that maybe have arthritis, that have carpal tunnel, that have any elbow issues, medial, lateral epicondylitis, anything where a pronated grip on a kettlebell is rather uncomfortable, the freedom of handles or the towel allows them to grip wherever is most comfortable for them.
Burada bazı bireylerde işte el bileğinde, karpal tünel veya dirsekte herhangi bir epikondilit problemi olabilir veya elde gene başka benzer problemler görünebilir veya pronasyon pozisyonda rahat olmayan pozisyonlar varsa havluyla harekette daha rahat olan pozisyona yerleştirebilirsiniz. El bileğini ona göre pozisyonlayabiliriz.
So you can adjust the lever height, you can adjust the load, heavier or lighter, and like previous, we can do faster tempos, slower tempos, greater ranges of motion to progress or regress these lifts.
Burada aslında kaldıracağımız ağırlığın yükseklik olarak seviyesini değiştirebiliriz. Tutma şeklimizi, kavrama şeklimizi belli açılarla modifiye edebiliriz ve kaldırma hızımızı da yavaşlatabiliriz veya hızlandırabiliriz.
A couple more additional pure strength lifts that we like to use, but also that are mimicking real life type movement patterns is the single arm row. And we have multiple variations. One is a 3-point row, as you'll see coach performing here. One hand on a box or a bench, the other arm pulling, rowing in the upward direction.
Farklı varyasyonlarımız var. Bu varyasyonlardan birisi tek kol row yapma. Bu da 3 nokta oluyor dediğim gördüğünüz gibi 2 ayak artı elin temas halinde olması. Serbest olan ekstremitenin ağırlığı yukarı yönde çekmesi ile beraber oluşuyor.
With rowing mechanics like this, there are some older strategies where you place one knee on a box and a bench and perform the row from here. Where anatomically this may not be the most efficient is the height of the box. If my box is lower or my bench is lower or higher, my hips may be crooked or unaligned. That's why I like to do this from a standing position, so both hips are at a level height, and then placing my hand or my fist on a bench or a box, giving me a good squared up alignment while I row.
Normalde dizimizi box'ın üzerine koyuyorduk. Bu her zaman biyomekanik olarak iyi bir pozisyon olmayabilir. Çünkü kalça seviyemiz bozulabiliyor ve bir kalça yukarıda birisi aşağıda kalabiliyor. Ama bu şekilde aldığımız zaman istediğimiz şekilde biyomekanik olarak daha etkili bir çekiş yapabiliyoruz.
Additionally, once you're square and level here, the arm that's on the bench or the box is really important to focus on as well. You want to push down with this arm and be muscular. I want to see their muscles on as they're pushing down into the box and then performing the row with the opposite arm coming up. So both arms are active in a sense, like you're tearing a telephone book. Both arms are actively pushing while the other one is pulling, shearing that weight apart as you come up.
Burada box'ın üzerinde olan kolun pozisyonu önemli. Kolun bu şekilde box'ı aşağı doğru itmesi lazım ve o sabit olan kolun kaslarının aktif olması lazım. Bir tarafta itiş, bir tarafta çekiş yapıyoruz gibi düşünün.
And one more thing that we commonly see people make mistakes on here is they turn their shoulders down and rotate. And so you end up getting this thoracic rotation component to the row, which even to my knees and my hips, you can see like my whole body gets out of alignment when we do this. For more athletic, dynamic individuals, this would be a fine option. But for this population, knowing anatomically they're not strong, period, we want to be as kind of squared and as sagittally lined up as possible to keep them a little more robotic and just master this basic movement before we move on to anything too advanced.
Yani hareketi zorlaştırmadan önce bu şekilde pozisyon almamız özellikle vücudunu kontrol etmeyen bireyler için daha sağlıklı, daha verimli oluyor. Bazı kişiler bu hareket sırasında gövdesini döndürebiliyorlar tabii ki. Ama bizim burada sabit kalmamız başlangıç aşaması için önemli.
And the next variation that we have of this is called a gardener's row. The gardener row is named that because you're in the garden, you're outside, you're working, you don't have a box, you don't have a bench that you can put your arm on, but you still want that third point of contact to help support your back. This is where you place your own forearm on your thigh, brace and push down as you perform the row up.
Diğer row çeşidimiz Gardener row deniliyor. Burada sabit olan kol diğer bacağın üstüne konularak vücut sabit tutulmaya çalışıyor.
As with the other lifts, we can increase range of motion by going lower, higher. We can increase the load or decrease it. We can change tempos, and then we can change postures, positions, in which make it a little bit more technical or a little bit more difficult for clients as they master this basic movement.
Burada tempoyu değiştirebiliriz. Pozisyonu, yüksekliği değiştirebiliriz veya yaptığımız hareketin hızını değiştirebiliriz.
And then one of my absolute favorites here is a suitcase carry or a weighted carry. I'll say that the farmer carry is probably the one that is most common, where you have a weight in each hand. Probably the one that you would think, oh, I can carry more load here, so this one's probably going to be more beneficial for me. However, I think the suitcase carry actually brings a greater return.
Burada suitcase carry veya işte farmer carry gibi çeşitli varyasyonlar var. Onlara bakacağız.
We'll see the overload of weight being on one side, very valuable in developing the core strength, the trunk strength to help keep the body upright, the cylinder of the posture of the body upright. And by doing so, recruiting more musculature to help ground you as opposed to carrying an even weight on either side.
Ve burada vücudu tek bir taraftan ağırlık taşıyarak hareket ettiriyoruz. Bu da doğal olarak bir taraftaki core aktivasyonun daha fazla olmasını sağlıyor.
This is my dad, who I had the opportunity to train the last 3 years of his life. He came to me at 74 years old with 2 knee replacements and kidney failure and anemic and a whole collection of ailments that on paper you would say this person's never going to get any better. And over 3 years, I had the opportunity to train him and help improve him to a point where he had lost over 100 pounds and had improved his strength to the point where he can perform a lot of the movements you're going to see him featured in this webinar.
Bu benim babam 74 yaşındayken çalışmaya başlamıştık. Böbreklerinde problem vardı ve her ikizinde de replasman geçirmişti. Ve kağıt üstünde aslında bu kişinin çok bir daha eskisi daha iyi olamayacağını söyleyebilirsiniz ama ileride göstereceğim. Belli 3 yıl boyunca çalışma sonucumuz da belli gelişimler kat ettik.
Unfortunately, he passed away 3 years ago, but still is the best and the most successful client I ever had the chance to work with.
3 sene önce kaybettik onu ama çalıştığım en iyi kişiydi benim için.
You'll notice in this video here, as he's carrying the weight, how short his gait is and how wobbly he is as he continues to carry the load. Some steps longer, some steps shorter, and you could see the catch of forward slow, as opposed to a smooth, consistent gait.
Yürüyüşüne bakacak olursak sağa sola yalpalandığını, bazı adımların kısa, bazı adımların uzun olduğunu görebiliyoruz.
As we progressed, this was about 6 weeks later in his training, we see improvements in a longer gait, a stronger gait, a faster gait, and better hinging mechanics, how efficiently he can turn and change directions, a bigger kickstand stance when he picks up, better posture as he carries and moves across, and the load is twice as heavy.
6 hafta sonra çektiğimiz videosuna bakacak olursak burada ağırlık artmış, adımlar daha iyi atılıyor ve adım hızı daha hızlı bir önceki videoya göre.
As a key here, sometimes carrying one load on one side can make someone so off balance that they perform this poorly. So what you can use as a replacement is an uneven loaded carry of maybe 10 to 15 pounds, 4 to 6 kilos in difference from one hand to the other.
Ve burada da ağırlığı bir elde taşıdığımız zaman belli farklılıklar olabiliyor. Veya 4-6 kilo sağ elle sol el arasında belli farklar da olabiliyor. Bu şekilde de taşıyabilir.
When we perform these, a couple of things that you want to focus on mostly is not just holding the weight at your side, but it's actually retracting the shoulder back and holding the weight just behind your hip.
Bu şekilde ağırlığı tutması güzel ama sadece ağırlığı tutması değil, beraberinde omuzunu da retraksiyonda tutması, hafif kalçanın arkasında tutması bizim için önemli.
So we have a muscular engagement of the arm here and a focus to not let the weight hit our thigh. If I don't contract enough, I give to the weight, I can tilt. If I over contract and tilt the opposite way, the weight's going to then rub on my thigh as I carry. I need a good muscular engagement to hold me tight, a retraction of the arm to hold the weight just off my hip. And then from there, I pretend this guy's full of water and I'm going to move real smooth as I go across the floor, either forward or backwards.
Burada ağırlığı tabii ki düzgün tutmam lazım. İyi kas kasılması gerekiyor. Çok kasarsam diğer tarafa doğru tilt yapacağım. Eğer az kasılırsa vücudum ağırlığa doğru vücudum düşecek. O yüzden benim hareket sırasında iyi bir kas kasılmasına ihtiyacım var.
And the reason we call this a carry and not a walk are two very different reasons. Is when you're walking, you get a little bit more of kind of like a side to side, a little more up and down, a little bit more rhythm when you're walking. But when you carry, it's very smooth and robotic, and it's kind of like you're gliding across the floor as opposed to bouncing, moving up and down. If we have a heavy load in hand and you bounce up and down or sway side to side, greater opportunities to fall off balance, to hurt your body's frame giving to the weight with each step, as opposed to the rigidity and being really smooth as you carry across the floor.
Burada aslında carry dememizin sebebi, yani taşıma dememizin sebebi yürürkenki postürden daha farklı postüre sahip olması. Yürürken ellerimiz daha serbest, belli bir dinamik içerisinde yürüyoruz ama ağırlığı alıp yürüdüğümüz zaman biraz daha robotik bir şekilde yürümüş oluyoruz.
And then one last thing is how far of a gait, how long of a step do we actually want? If your foot is 10 inches, let's just go easy, basic easy math, like 10 inches, and both feet are 10 inches, and you have 1, 2, that's 20 inches, 3, that's 30 inches, that's the ideal stepping length, is 3 of your feet, okay? So there's 1, 2, 3. That's ideal, how long of a step that I want to take. Go ahead.
Burada ne kadar adım mesafesi atmamız lazım olarak bakacaksak, düz bir hesap yaparsak ayağımız 10 inç olarak düşündüğümüz zaman 10 inçin 3 katı dediğimiz 30 inç mesafesine kadar ideal olarak adım atmamız gerekecektir.
2, 3. So when a client is in full stride, what our goal is to have their back heel to their front toe, have one of their feet be capable of fitting in between that back heel and that front toe. When we start with people, it may be so small that they're not even outside their own foot, where it's just such a small little robot step. We're going to have to build this out slowly as we train.
Bizim buradaki kişi adım ilk atmaya başladığında bu şekilde bir mesafe yakalamamız lazım. Mesafe aralığının bu şekilde olması lazım. Ama kişi ilk başladığında adım sayısı veya adım atarken ayakları birbirinin yanında duruyor normalde. Bizim bu aralığı açmamız lazım.
You'll have clients that are so deconditioned that their posture has given in to gravity, so their hips are tight, their shoulders are rounded forward, their head is down and out. That's kyphosis, right? Their bodies are basically seated into this position. So then when we ask them take a big step, they can't. They don't have the ability to take a big step. So our job is to help build strength on the back of their body that slowly starts to bring them higher, and that will allow for longer steps to occur. But you can't just simply tell them, take bigger steps, and they'll do it. They're not capable. It's not possible. We've got to reverse engineer this and build them out of it.
Bize gelen yaşlıların kondisyonu genellikle düşük olacaktır ve bu şekilde pozisyonları olacaktır. Kalçaları gergin, omuzları öne dönük, kafaları öne dönük, kifoz pozisyonda oturan bir vücut yapıları var. Bunlara adım genişliğini uzun tut dediğimiz zaman veya geniş tut dersek bunu yapamayacaktır doğal olarak. O yüzden ilk başta biraz daha arka taraftaki kas zincirlerini uyarıp kasları kuvvetlendirip ona göre vücudu biraz daha dik hale getirip adım istemeliyiz. O yüzden kişi ilk geldiğinde zaten bunu yapamayacaktır.
You'll be surprised when watching a client walk with no weight in hand versus with weight in hand. As soon as they have load in hand and more muscles of their body are activated to help hold them in better posture, they feel more grounded. They feel more muscular engagement to help hold them in a better posture to where they are more confident in taking longer steps. So I'll ask a client, just walk, and they'll walk down and back, and then I'll hand them a weight and have them do it again. No other instruction. They'll take 3 to 4 inch longer steps and stand with better posture with load in hand because they're simply activating more muscles to help them in their natural gait pattern.
Genellikle şuna şaşıracaksınız. İlk başta kişi vücut ağırlığıyla yürüdüğünde veya vücut ağırlığıyla beraber bir ağırlık alıp yürüdüğünde arasında ciddi bir denge farkı olacaktır. Çünkü ağırlık olduğu zaman kişi vücudunu daha fazla kasacaktır. Daha iyi bir kas aktivasyonu olacaktır. Ve kişi kendini daha dengeli hissedecektir.
All right, let's move on to potentiopenia. And defining this one is, again, Greek for poverty of power, loss of muscular power due to deconditioning and the lack of use.
Potentiopenia'ya baktığımız zaman aslında bu da güç kaybı demek oluyor. Yani kas gücünün kaybolması kondisyondan kaynaklı veya işte kullanılmamasından kaynaklı oluyor.
Another word for potentiopenia, you'll see powerpenia. Those two terms are interchangeable and will be used throughout the presentation as meaning the same thing.
Bu da aslında genellikle powerpenia diye isimlendirilebilir. Devamında böyle görürseniz aynı olduğuna emin olun.
Potentiopenia directly affects the type 2 muscle fibers, and this is going to have a result on how fast a muscular contraction can occur, how much maximal power output a client can apply, but at the same time is also going to affect their reaction skills and their ability to move quickly to rescue a fall. And though they're losing this ability is what causes more catastrophic falls.
Potentiopenia aslında tip 2 kasiflerinden kaynaklı oluyor ve bu tip 2 kasiflerin azalması da kas kontraksiyonu, hızlı kasılan kas kontraksiyonların azalmasını, bu da güç çıktısına azalmasına neden olacaktır. Bu da tabii ki nörolojik bir problem veya kassal bir problem değil.
And just like dynapenia, this is not a neurological disease. It is not genetic, and this is not a muscular disease that you can catch. This is caused specifically due to frail aging and misuse.
Bu da genellikle yaşla beraber veya işte kullanılmamasından kaynaklı meydana gelen bir durum oluyor.
Loss of power, we'll see a natural decrease in this as we age. However, the severity of how big of a drop off greatly depends on how much a client utilizes the skill as they get older.
Burada aslında kas gücünün azalması tabii ki seviyesi veya miktarı kişinin bu gücü ne kadar kullandığına bağlı olarak değişecektir.
This chart here, I just want to show you this one in yellow, gives a really good understanding of sarcopenia being the loss of muscle mass. That's the line in blue. Dynapenia being the loss of strength, pure output of strength. That's the line in green. And then powerpenia or potentiopenia being the loss in red. And notice how early in life that starts to occur. This age bracket here, where the line starts to drop, is around 35 years of age. So at 35, we're already starting to lose power. Around 45 to 50, strength. And then around 60 to 65, actual lean muscle mass.
Bu genellikle buradaki chart'a baktığımız zaman power dediğimiz güç kaybı potentiopenia'yı, strength dediğimiz kuvvet kaybı dynapenia'yı ve mass de kütle kaybı da sarkopenia'yı gösteriyor bize. Ve bu seviye olarak 35 yaş civarında meydana geliyor. Yani biz 35 yaştan sonra ilk başta bir güç kaybediyoruz ve what was the range of the age of the strength and mass?
For strength was 45, and then mass is 65.
Ve 45 yaş civarlarında kuvvet kaybımız başlıyor ve 65 yaş civarlarında da kütle kaybımız başlıyor.
There have been studies done that showed men over the age of 59 years of age performing power-based movements on machines for 8 minutes twice a week, increasing their potentiopenia by 20 years. So it doesn't require a lot of use. It just does require regular use to maintain this skill.
Ve yapılan belli araştırmalara baktığımız zaman mesela 59 yaşındaki bireyleri alıp bunları haftada 2 gün 8 dakikalık güç egzersizleri yapmışlar. Bu güç egzersizlerinden dolayı kişinin güç artışı, potentiopenia'nın artışını görmüşler. Bu da tabii ki çok kullanmaktan ziyade değil de düzenli olarak bu yetenekleri kullanmanın potentiopenia'yı, gücü arttırdığını göstermiştir.
All right, to train for power, we're gonna assess it with the sit to stand and the time sit to stand, which I'll show you in just a little bit. But to train specifically for power in some of our lifts, one of the first ones that we like to teach a client is a hinge to a high pull.
Ve bunu antrene etmek için kullanacağımız, göstermemiz gereken şey hinge ve high pull dediğimiz hareket.
Proper hinge mechanics will start off here for us with just the basics of teaching a client to push their hips back, learn to utilize their hamstrings as the primary mover, and then standing back up, as opposed to rounding their back over and using their extensors of their spine to bring them back upright.
Ve buradaki amacımız kalça hinge paternini öğretmek. Bu pozisyonda aynı şekilde gövde düz ve arka bacak kaslarını hissedecek şekilde yapmak. Çoğu kişi bu şekilde gövdesini yuvarlak pozisyona getirip yukarı kalkarken de elektör spinalarını kasacaktır.
As we talked about earlier with that kyphotic position, this can be very challenging for clients because of tight hamstrings and tight hip flexors and that poor postured forward. So the question becomes, if we can't get them into a perfect posture, should we still lift them, or should we continue to do corrective exercise to try to improve the posture? Which should we do first, or which should we focus on?
Burada çoğu kişi kas gerginliklerinden veya işte postürel durumlardan kaynaklı buna yapamayacaktır. İlk başta bunları yapmamız mı lazım yoksa korrektif egzersizlerle düzeltmemiz lazım?
I'll give you a basic rule of thumb is if someone is 55 years of age and has what I would consider a potential to improve their posture based on what we're going to talk about here, I would try to do both things. Try to correctively fix their posture and teach them to hinge and lift well. If they're over the age of 55, then just lift them. Lift them with the best posture they can do. But more than likely, you're not going to be able to fix kyphosis that late in life. But the benefits of just lifting is so much better than trying to correctively fix something you're probably not going to be able to improve on anyhow.
Eğer kişi 55 yaşından düşükse genellikle her iki durumu da öğretmeye çalışırım. Hem düzeltmeye çalışırım. Beraber düzelttikçe inç paternini de öğretirim. Eğer 55 yaşın üzerindeyse genellikle kaldırma tekniği benim için, kaldırma şekli benim için daha önemli oluyor. Yani nasıl kaldırdığından ziyade ne kadar kaldırması benim için daha önemli oluyor. Çünkü belli bir yaştan sonra artık o kifotik paterni düzeltmek o kadar kolay olmuyor.
And by saying that, I don't mean that you just forget about technique and just lift them heavy. We're always working on trying to get them in the best postures that we can. But at some point, you have to just say, this is the kyphotic posture they are in. Is it more beneficial to stress their bones and build their muscles even though they're not in perfect positions? Yes. Or do we not lift them and try to keep correcting them with resistant bands and better posture? There's only so much corrective exercising you can do, but there's so many more benefits I can give them if I can get them strong and try to build their bone density and try to build their muscle mass and get them more explosive that'll keep them from falling and ultimately ending their life early.
Tabii ki burada kişi hareket düzgün yapamıyor diye tamamen tekniği bir kenara bırakıp sadece kaldırmaya bakmayacağız. Gene yapabildiği en iyi postürde yapmasına izin vereceğiz. Ama tabii ki kasların ve kemiklerin girdiği ve içinde sıkışıp kaldığı postürel kifoz paternini düzeltmektense tamamen ki yapamayacağız. Ağırlık kaldırması veya kaldırabilmesi sonraki yaşantısı için daha faydalı olacaktır.
Okay, so now we know client can hinge. They can do so as well as we're going to get them to do it. We're going to have them really focus on utilizing their hamstrings as the primary movers, and that their lower back and the erectors, the musculatures going up their spine, are basically trying to lock in place to allow the lever of the hip to work underneath it.
Ve burada kişi hinge yapabiliyor. Beraberinde kalçasını yukarıya aşağı hareket etmeyi öğreniyor.
To make this a power-based movement, we are going to have them eccentrically stretch down, steady and slow, but then dynamically, concentrically contract on the way up into a high pull, and then eventually into a high pull with a catch, as you'll see Gary performing here.
Bunu güç egzersizi haline getirmek istiyorsak eksantrik olarak yavaş inip ondan sonra indiği gibi konsantrik olarak yukarı çıkıp high pull yapıp ağırlığı yakalamasını istiyoruz.
Once they learn the hinge, the high pull, and the catch, you can then add in one more complex movement pattern, which is the sit down to the stand up position that we know they're already proficient at.
Bunu yapmaya başladıklarında ondan sonra bir tane hareket paterni daha koyup ağırlığı high pull'a getirirken oturma pozisyonuna gelmesini isteyebiliriz.
This marriage of movement starts to become a cognitive component for us in our training as well. So we're not only just training their body, but we're training their hand-eye coordination. We're training their mind cognitively, having to think about each movement, each step, how to perform it, what order to perform it in, and how to start over again. I'll show you some demos here in just a second.
Burada tabii ki hareketin koordinasyonu nasıl yaptığı, nasıl ilerlediği önemli oluyor. Şimdi göstereceğim.
Okay, so we're starting off in front of our box with a good hinge to stretch the hamstrings. We come up into a high pull where we're trying to pull the kettlebell apart, as opposed to a high upright row where our elbows are up at an angle and we're impinging the shoulder. Up to shoulder height and pull apart.
Bu şekilde yavaş bir şekilde ilk başta öne doğru eğilip bu şekilde kollarımızı dışa doğru açıyoruz. Açılı bir şekilde omuzumuzu sıkıştırmadan squat'tan açıyoruz hareketi.
From there, the grip is going to be a slide of the hands, a quick slide. It's not a release and grab.
Bunu öğrendikten sonra artık hızlı bir şekilde elimizin altından ağırlığı kaydırma olacak.
So they never actually let go of the implement. That's a big safety feature for us here.
Sorry, what did you say?
They don't actually let go of the implement. They just slide their grip. That's a key safety component.
Buradaki ağırlığın serbest düşmesine izin vermiyorlar. Ağırlığı bu şekilde kaydırıp yakalamaya çalışıyorlar güvenlik açısından.
Now we marry the whole thing together. Hinge, high pull catch, keep it in here tight, all the way down, unload our weight on the bench, re-engage, drive up, and then return to start.
Şimdi öğrendiğimiz her şeyi birleştiriyoruz. Hinge yapıyoruz. Yukarı çıkıp high pull yapıp kaydırıyoruz. Ondan sonra oturuyoruz. Ondan sonra tekrardan kalkıyoruz ve ağırlığı aşağı bırakıyoruz.
When they get into a rhythm, they can start to make this a little smoother, a little more coordinated, and it gets a little more complex, a little more dynamic. You'll even hear them start to huff and puff a little bit as we work a little bit of conditioning into this power training.
Ritmi yakaladıktan sonra biraz daha dinamik bir şekilde yapmaya başlayabiliyorlar.
The box squat, the sit to stand at the bottom, can eventually turn into an air squat. So you can just do this out in space where they don't actually sit down onto a chair. They just do a deep goblet squat, return to standing, and then continue from there.
Ve box squat'la beraber kişi oturmadan ayağa kalkmaya devam ediyor veya air squat da yapabiliyor. Bundan sonra yakalayıp bırakıyor tekrardan aynı şekilde.
A couple other of my favorite power lifts include snatches as our first one that we'll feature here. Oops. You'll see how dynamic the eccentric stretch is at the bottom and how concentrically fast, explosive we're pulling that weight up and overhead.
Ve burada da dinamik olarak powerlift'i hızlı bir şekilde ne kadar yaptığını görebiliyoruz.
And you think about the body's ability to contract quickly. That action, when you tell a muscle, turn on, turn off, when you activate that, neurologically, your body is learning to do that on command, no matter what movement action is occurring. Meaning that if we just practice pulling a weight straight up and down, does that mean that we can't push forward or pull back really quickly? We absolutely can. The muscles are learning to be turned on explosively quick. That can be applied in any direction, in any movement, not just the movements that we train.
Burada tabii ki sadece antrene ettiğimiz hareketlerin hızını değiştirmemiz gerekmiyor. Yani yaptığımız bu şekilde yukarıdan aşağı bir hareket yaptırıyorsak aynı şekilde ağırlığı önden arkaya veya arkadan öne doğru da hızlandırabiliyoruz veya yavaşlatabiliyoruz. Sadece yaptığımız hareket paternlerine bağlı kalmak zorunda değiliz.
This is why you can have a golfer who performs rotational torque producing movements benefit themselves, improve their power by doing snatches, which are a sagittal, one directional movement pattern, completely different from the sport that they play. But the explosive nature taught into the musculature through the explosive response of the muscular contraction is then applicable into whatever sport movement they perform.
Burada tabii ki bir golfü düşündüğümüz zaman rotasyonel bir paternle vuruş yapıyor. Bunu güçlendirebilmek için bir snatch yapabiliyor. Tabii ki birisi sagittal patern, diğeri birbirinden farklı paternler olabiliyor ama burada öğrendiği ani refleksif hareketler birbirini etkileyebiliyor ve birbirine yardımcı olabiliyor.
And as one key component here with the snatches is to notice how everything is built around really good hinging mechanics. So we're utilizing our hamstrings, not our back, but also that we're pulling and keeping that weight really close to the body. The closer, the better, the faster, the better.
Burada kullandığımız ağırlığı vücuda yakın tutmaya çalışıyoruz ve hızlı yapmaya çalışıyoruz.
Next, we move on to the clean. Cleans are basically the bottom half of this pulling action, where we are going to pull not just up, but up and back. Different from performing a barbell clean, a dumbbell or a kettlebell clean is performed in a different action.
Burada barbell bir diğer hareketimiz clean hareketi. Burada gene çekiş hareketlerinden birisi. Vücuda yakın tutuyoruz gene aynı şekilde. Barbell hareketinden daha farklı oluyor.
I was a discus thrower and a hammer thrower in college. So when we would Olympic lift with barbells, and we would learn that the hinging, high pulling action of a clean or the snatch, the bar had a certain path, but primarily our featured emphasis on the pull was to pull straight up and to allow our traps to kind of finish the angled pull of the bar at the top. But our big focus was vertical.
Ben üniversitede atıcıydım. Beraber bu yüzden olimpik barla antrenman yapıyorduk. Ve barı ne kadar yukarı çekersek çekelim her zaman vücudumuz dik kalıyordu.
But when you clean a dumbbell or a fat bell, center mass bell, a kettlebell, any single implement, the pattern has to change because it's not so important to just pull up anymore. The action is actually to pull up and back. And so that's where we use this cue, pull the emergency brake. Like in your car, the emergency brake, we want to pull that emergency brake up and back. So then we can cradle underneath wherever we are most comfortable.
Ama dumbbell'da yaptığımız zaman bu sefer biraz daha geriye doğru çekebiliyoruz. Yukarıya ve arkaya doğru çekebiliyoruz. Sanki el frenini çeker gibi.
The big value in this too is how comfortable it is for people with any wrist, shoulder, elbow issues from a pronated grip on a bar to being able to go to a neutral grip and then move that weight to wherever is comfortable for me is a huge win. So this is a great benefit for us anatomically when we're pulling here with a neutral grip versus having to be stuck with a barbell in that forward pronated posture.
Omuzda, dirsekte ve elde bir problem varsa kişi pronasyon pozisyonundan ziyade dumbbell'la beraber ağrısız bir pozisyon seçip ona göre pozisyonu alıp hareketi yapabiliyor.
And these eventually will lead to a clean into maybe an overhead press or a clean into a front squat or a clean into a front squat and an overhead press. This is kind of that base movement pattern to heave that weight to the shoulders that then you can do all kinds of different variations from.
Clean'den overhead squat, press'e veya clean'den squat'a geçebilirsiniz. Tabii ki burada farklı varyasyonlar ekleyebiliriz.
Next up is the swing. And you'll notice that this client here, Anna, I'm recording my television screen because I'm training her at her home online. But look how good that swing is. She's never actually trained with me in person before. This has all been online training. And so for her to be able to learn that hip displacement and swing a 16 kilo kettlebell here at home at almost 80 years of age is pretty cool.
Ve burada da bir üstteki videoya baktığımız zaman kişi daha önce antrenmanını yaptırmadı ama ne kadar düzgün yaptığını ve 80 yaşında birisi için ne kadar iyi yaptığını görebiliyorsunuz. Swing hareketini.
Just as with all the previous movements here, this is all based around the hip hinge, and the hinge being the most efficient movement pattern, the hamstring dominant movement pattern that we need. We're going to push the hips back, stretch those hamstrings, dynamically contract, stand up, and get that posterior chain firing rather quick.
Ve burada da Hint paternini görebiliyoruz aynı şekilde. Kalçayı geriye doğru götürüp hamstringleri gerip ondan sonra dinamik olarak tekrardan hareketi yapıyoruz.
You've probably seen swings in the past that either go out to say chest height or that go all the way over your head. We call this a low swing as we are primarily focused on the dynamic eccentric stretch at the bottom and then a quick concentric to get us to the vertical position. We're not worried about a massive amount of follow through and where we're trajecting the kettlebell out to. We really want to work the bottom half of the lift.
Ve burada da low swing denilebiliyor bu harekete. Çünkü hareketi yukarıya kadar götürebiliyoruz. Bu low swing dediğimiz harekette eksantrik kasılma sürüyor. Beraberinde yukarıya doğru konsantrik hızlı bir kasılma yapabiliyoruz. Ama burada eksantrik kasılma ile beraber biz kas aktivasyonu yeteri kadar alabiliyoruz.
Nazım, I see two questions in the chat in there. Do you want to tell me what those are?
The first one is when it will be finished.
When will we be done? In 1 hour.
When it will be done? In 1 hour.
Yeah.
And the second one is there any age limits for this type of workout?
Is there any, what was that?
Age limits.
Age limits? No. No, as long as clients are capable of performing this properly, like the mechanics are good. My 8-year-old does snatches, and she's just using 3 pounds, 1 or 2 kilos. But I also have an 88-year-old client that does snatches with 3 kilos as well. So no, as long as they perform the movement patterns correctly and they can handle the load that they are manipulating, these are all good lifts for any age.
1 saat sonra bitiyormuş. Yaş olarak da herhangi bir limit yok. Yani 8 yaşındaki oğlum da 2-3 kiloyla yapıyor hareketi. Veya işte 88 yaşındaki danışanım da aynı şekilde yapıyor. Burada mekanik düzgün ve patern düzgünse herhangi bir sıkıntı yok.
Yeah, good questions. All right, and so all three of these movements that we've looked at so far, the snatch, the clean, the swing, are all on eccentric hamstring stretches at the way down and a fast concentric pull up. But we also want to focus that dynamic movement pattern in the other direction. And so that's where the slam comes in as one of our featured lifts.
O hareketlerin aslında eksantrik hamstring kasılmaları oluyor. O yüzden farklı pozisyonlara da kasılmaya ihtiyacımız var. O yüzden slam hareketlerimiz var.
And you'll see here on the slamming action, the client is standing with the sandbell all the way overhead, throwing his hips back, in a sense, contracting the anterior chain of his body, creating momentum in a downward action like he's swinging an axe, and allowing him to completely unload all of his power, all of his momentum into one implement.
Peki burada kum torbasını yukarıya doğru fırlatıyor ve beraberinde aşağı doğru inerken hinç hareketi yapıyor ve aşağı doğru tamamen vücudunu serbest bırakmasını istiyorum.
For those that don't have great flexibility and they can't squat all the way down without rounding their back or tucking their butt to grab the implement after they've slammed it, we will use bumper plates or wood boxes to have them slam it on, and we'll actually bring the floor up to them.
Eğer fleksibilitesi yoksa seviyeyi biraz daha yukarıya çekebiliyoruz. Yükseklik olarak.
In all of the lifts that we utilize in the weight room, none of them can you truly put 100% of your effort into accelerating, because you always have to worry about where the implement is going to end up. You can't perform a snatch or a clean or a jerk at 100% effort because you still have to control the weight once you catch it. This is one of the only lifts that we can do at a true 100% maximal explosive effort, because we get to release the implement. And release lifts are where you truly create great power in older populations.
Bu hareket aslında yaşlı popülasyonlarda kullanabileceğimiz en iyi güç egzersizi ve patlayıcı egzersiz.
And that brings us into our last one here, the release lifts. If you have opportunities to take clients outside, you have implements that can be thrown or tossed and chucked around. Not only is this fun, camaraderie-wise, everybody likes to go outside and they love to throw things. This is a really explosive, very dynamic way to train.
Eğer imkanınız varsa kişileri dışarı çıkarıp hareketleri yaptırmaya devam edebilirsiniz. Kişiler genellikle hoşlarına giden bir şeyleri atmak, fırlatmak.
These are sandballs that the ladies are throwing here. These are designed to be thrown and to be slammed. They're made out of Kevlar. They can handle a lot of damage, and they only have 1 to 2 kilos of weight in them, so they can be accelerated rather quickly.
Bunlar genellikle kum torbaları, 1-2 kiloluk bir kum torbaları. O yüzden hızlanmaları veya işte yüksek bir şekilde fırlatılmaları kolay oluyor.
This is called a vertical toss, between the leg vertical toss. And one of our golden rules when you're throwing an implement is rule number 1, never take your eyes off of the implement.
Bunlar aslında fırlatma hareketlerinin belli kuralları var. Bu hareketleri yaparken özellikle vertikal olarak fırlatırken hiçbir zaman gözünü fırlattığın objeden ayırma.
Rule number 2 is never try to catch the implement. Always let the implement hit the ground. These are heavy. They're coming at you quick. They have handles. They have zippers. They have welds. We've seen people break fingers, dislocate fingers, get hit in the face, get hit in the chest. Just let it hit the ground. Never try to catch an implement.
O yüzden bir de ikinci kuralımız da fırlattığımız objenin her zaman yere düşmesine izin vermemiz lazım. Çünkü çoğu kişinin yüzüne çarpabiliyor veya işte eline çarpabiliyor, parmakları disloke olabiliyor.
And all throwers will know rule number 3 is you never turn your back to someone who is throwing. Basically, that is the golden rule with implements in the air is if you turn your back and you get hit, it's your fault. It's not my job as the thrower to know where you are. It's your job as the not thrower to get out of the way of the things I'm throwing. So you never take your eyes off it, never catch it, and never turn your back to someone who's throwing.
Ve üçüncü kuralımız da şudur. Kişi fırlatma yaparken mutlaka fırlatma yapan kişiye arkanızı dönmeyin. Bir şey olursa bu sizin hatanız oluyor tamamen.
All right, up and overs are our next one here. This is a fun one too, where we focus on the client using their hips to drive and push horizontally. But we call it an up and over, meaning if I were standing right in front of you, you would have to throw it up and over me. So we get a parabola effect, a power-based parabola effect, and them kind of doing a two-handed shot put to punch that weight up and away from you.
Ve ağırlıkları birbirine fırlatma hareketimiz de mevcut.
Good proper pickups every time, so we're not bending over. Utilizing the hips to flex down like they're going to start to squat, and then powering through their heels, punching the weight out in front. They can even take a little step or a little jump as they go forward as they punch that weight out in front of them.
Ve kişi burada hareketi yerden tekrardan almaya çalışıyor. Objeyi ondan sonra ağırlığı yukarıda tutup öne doğru fırlatmaya çalışıyor.
And then our last one can be performed indoors or outdoors, as you'll see my dad performing here, is called a between the legs for distance. My dad, this is great. I'll turn the audio up for you here in a moment. But once tossed, a proper pickup, a good hinge mechanic, and then powering through the hips with a forward release, trying to throw that implement as far for distance as you can.
Ve son hareketimiz, sağdaki hareketimiz görüyorsunuz. İçeride ve dışarıda yapabiliyor. İleri atabildiğiniz kadar atmaya çalışıyorsunuz.
If you've ever watched hammer, shot put, discus, javelin, they always yell when they throw the implement. Knowing that that's what I did as an athlete, my dad, here's my dad's yell. I'll let you guys. Good times roll, not too high. That's my dad. He's a good guy. All right, moving on to sarcopenia, team. We're doing good on time. Defining sarcopenia is the loss of muscle mass and function due to severe deconditioning in aging bodies. Not just in aging bodies, severe deconditioning in aging bodies.
Sarkopeni aslında kas kütle kaybının azalması ve bunun da e, birden fazla dekondisyonun eşlik ettiği bir yaşlanma tablosu oluyor.
So when you hear that, you think, well, isn't that what dynapenia and potentiopenia is? Think of it more of this way, is that sarcopenia is overall, you're losing muscle mass. And then under that, you've lost strength and you've lost power. So dynapenia and potentiopenia are two subcategories of the overall disease sarcopenia.
Linapenia ve potentiopenia aslında bunların ikisinin birleşimi aslında temelde sarkopenia oluşturuyor.
The CDC officially declared sarcopenia as a diagnosable disease in 2016, which was a big win for us, is that a client can now go to a doctor and that doctor can say, you are suffering from the disease of sarcopenia. I encourage you to start resistance training, increase your protein intake, and try to get as strong as you can.
CDC tarafından bir hastalık olarak kabul ediliyor. Artık tanısı konulabiliyor. Ve doktor size sarkopeniye yakalandığınızı, bunun için ağırlık çalışmanız gerektiğini, protein almanız gerektiği tarzında önerilerde bulunabilir.
CDC stands for Center of Disease Control.
Bu CDC dediğimiz hastalık kontrol merkezi oluyor.
Sarcopenia occurs very quickly. So, example, you go skiing, you hurt your knee, and for the next 7 to 10 days, you're just lying in bed. After about 48 hours, you start to lose actual measurable size in your muscle mass.
Sarkopeni aslında 10-14 günlük yatak istirahatinden sonra %6'lık güç ve %8'lik kuvvet kaybı meydana geliyor. Bununla beraber aslında sarkopeni meydana gelebiliyor.
After 7 to 10 days, you start to lose general measurable strength seen in how long your gait is, how tall your posture is, and how much general strength output you can perform.
Ve burada 7-10 günden sonra, yatak istirahatinden sonra siz belli bir kas kütlesi ve kuvvet kaybı yaşıyorsunuz. Bu da yürüyüşünüzü etkiliyor doğal olarak.
In between 10 to 14 days, you'll see a 6% loss in power, an 8% loss in strength, and those numbers are for those around age 50 to 60, meaning that the older you are and the more deconditioned you are, the more aggressive those numbers can be when you are continually at bed rest, just sitting every day.
Tabii ki 10-14 güne ulaştığı zaman yatak istirahati %6'ya güç kaybı, %8 kuvvet kaybına doğru geliyor. Bu yaş itibariyle, yaş arttıkça buradaki yüzdelikler de artıyor.
These numbers that I'm about to share with you here are pre-pandemic numbers. These are from 2019. And they said that for the United States, just the average older adult over the age of 60, upwards of 10 to 13% of them had sarcopenia. About 50% over the age of 80 had sarcopenia, and then about half of those that were in assisted living communities had sarcopenia as well.
Bu 2019 pandemiden önceki veriler. Amerika'da %13 bir 60 yaş grubu üzerinde, %50 de 80 yaş grubu üzerinde sarkopeniye yakalanmış ve bunların %50'si de assisted, yani yardımlı yaşama ihtiyaç duyuyor.
Then the pandemic comes in 2020. We have a 2-week stay-at-home order asking people not to go outside and not do anything. So there's your 14 days of loss, everything you just see. But then that turned into multiple months and for some people, years of staying at home. And since that's occurred, we have not received numbers from the CDC or the WHO that we used to get every 3 years or so. They won't release those numbers because I think they're extremely, extremely high.
Ve pandemi geldikten sonra ki bu 2 haftalık dışarı çıkamama söz konusu. İşte buradaki problemlere yakalanma ihtimalimizi artırdı. OCD de bunu paylaşmıyor çünkü sayısının çok daha fazla olduğunu düşünüyorum.
In this chart here, you're going to be able to see an individual as they progress through life, later years of life, and as they enter something called the disability threshold.
Ve buradaki chart de hayat boyunca aslında kişinin disable yani belli bir engele yakalanma eşiği oluyor.
The disability threshold is a point in life where you are now dependent on a cane or a walker or a wheelchair or some type of assisted device or another human being to help take care of you.
O disability yani sizin bir kanediyene, koltuk değneğine veya işte tekerlekli sandalye ve bir bireye mi ihtiyacınız var yaşamak için?
And so for individuals that basically just kind of sit all day long, live life, but they're not physically active at all, they will hit the disability threshold right here, right around age 60.
Eğer kişi gün içerisinde çok hareket etmiyorsa buradaki threshold'u eşik değeri 60 olacak.
Those that do a little bit of activity, they get up and walk on occasion, and maybe they go on hikes and they do their own grocery shopping, and they're just kind of generally active. They'll hit that disability threshold somewhere around age 70 or so.
Biraz aktif olan bir birey bunu 70 yaş civarında yakalanır.
Those that maybe do Tai Chi and yoga, or they lift weights on occasion, they go out on bike rides, maybe they play pickleball. You know, they do a little bit of everything. Maybe it's around age 80 or so when they enter it.
Veya işte Tai Chi veya işte ona benzer basit hareketler yapan kişiler 60 yaş civarlarında olabiliyor.
And those that lift weights 2 to 3 days a week, they go out rucking, which is walking with a weighted vest or a backpack on. They're physically active, doing those 225 minutes of physical activity every week, 32 minutes every day. They resistance train, they eat well, they sleep well, they do all the things that we want them to do. They will either not enter the disability threshold or they won't hit it until 95 years of age or so.
Haftalık bu 225 dakikalık olayı antrenman olarak yapan kişiler, fiziksel olarak aktif olan bireyler bunları genellikle 95 yaş civarlarına denk geliyor.
Ideally, the stronger we make people and the more consistent they continue to resistance train when on vacation, when there's holidays, always. If they just stay consistent, ideally, they won't enter this disability threshold at all. They'll stay just above it until their last dying day.
Yani kişi olarak kişi sürekli aktif kalıyorsa bu threshold'un üstündeyse sürekli hep bu threshold'a yakalamayacak, hep threshold'un üstünde olacaktır.
Get all that out of there. All right, team. So now we know about sarcopenia. Here's a study that goes over exactly what we just talked about. 14 days stay at home during the quarantine. We saw individuals that had a strength coach that were inside a facility, worked out with someone on a daily basis, averaged 6,000 steps per day, were then asked to stay at home for 14 days, and here's what happened.
Buradaki bir çalışmaya baktığımız zaman aslında sarkopeni ne kadar hızlı olduğunu gösteriyor. Bu 14 günlük evde kalma karantinanın verdiği bir çalışma. Normalde 6.000 adımlık bir gün içi aktivitemiz var.
They went from 6,000 steps a day to 1,500 steps a day. That's a decrease of 75%.
Bu 1500 adıma düşüyor. %75'lik bir azalış söz konusu tabii ki.
And we saw their muscular strength decrease by 4%. Excuse me, their fat free body mass, that's muscle mass, reduced by 4%. We saw their strength decrease by 8%. And we saw their power reduction by 6%.
Ve burada da kuvvet kaybının azaldığını görebiliyoruz. %4'lük %4'lük kas kütlesinin azaldığını, %8'lik kas gücünün ve %6'lık gücün azaldığını görebiliyoruz.
All of this occurred in 14 days. So the strength coaches that worked with them said, well, let's see what we can build back with these folks in 14 days. And after 2 weeks of post rehabilitation training, they failed to reproduce any gains. It took them 6 months to rebuild what was lost in 2 weeks.
Bu kişileri 2 hafta çalıştırıp ne kadar geri alabiliriz de bakmışlar. Tabii ki yapamamışlar. Bu 2 haftalık kaybı geri toplamanın maliyeti 6 ay olmuş.
One additional study found very similar results where they simulated a injury in individuals, asking them to immobilize for 2 days. They saw the early onset of atrophy by a 1.7% loss in muscle volume.
Ve 2 günlük immobilizasyonun da aslında atrofiyi başlattığını ve bunun 1.7 kas hacminin azaldığını %1.7 kas hacminin azaldığını göstermiş.
After 7 days of immobilization, they were in full atrophy and they saw a 5.5% loss in muscle volume.
7 günlük immobilizasyonda tamamen atrofi oluşmuş ve %5.5'lik bir kas hacmi kaybı.
At 10 days, they saw a full early onset of sarcopenia, and by 14 days, they were fully sarcopenic. And look at those numbers, how consistent and how close they were to these ones over here. That's 2 studies showcasing the same results. Sarcopenia, 14 days, has a pretty catastrophic response on the body.
Ve 14 günlük immobilizasyonda tamamen sarkopeni gelişmiş ve %6'lık bir azalış söz konusu. Güç azalışı, %8'lik bir kuvvet kaybı ve %5'lik bir kas kütlesi.
All right, so how does sarcopenia now affect a client's walking gait? As they lose muscle mass, their posture starts to kyphotically curve, meaning it takes more of their body weight to tilt forward and a greater effort for them to try to stay stable.
Burada aslında sarkopenide yürüyüş nasıl değişiyor diye bakacak olursak kas kütlesi azalıyor. Performans çıktısı olarak adım daha uzun atılıyor ve the performance ability to take a longer and more stable steps.
Their loss of muscle mass decreases performance and their ability to take longer and more stable steps.
So sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't saw decreases.
Yep, yep.
Burada kas kütlesinin azalması performansı azaltıyor ve bu da daha uzun adımlar atmasına sebep oluyor.
They feel less stable. So mentally, they think, I'm going to take smaller steps. This will make me more structurally sound. And it doesn't, actually. It makes them quite the opposite. The smaller their base, the less supported they are. Kind of reverse mindset. If we all felt like that was the safest way to walk and the most stable way to walk, we would all take little tiny steps too. 20, 30, 40-year-olds. But we don't. We take these big, long, structured, triangular steps. However, in the mind, as you get less stable, the mind says, smaller steps are safer. Let's do that.
Normalde zihniniz artık size daha kısa adımların daha güvenli olduğunu söylüyorsa bunu yapabilirsiniz tabii ki. Ama bu güvenli olduğu anlamına gelmiyor. Güvenli olsaydı biz bunu 20-30 yaşında yapardık.
And because these steps are so small, It's really difficult if they lose their balance for them to recover because their base is already at such a small angle. The slightest miscalculation results in them ultimately accelerating their fall to the ground and not slowing it.
Bu da aslında kuvvetlerin azalmasına, stabilizasyonun daha kötü olmasına ve stabiliteyi kaybettiklerini gösteriyor.
As a result, we see multiple opportunities on a regular basis to fall, and in many cases, those falls are catastrophic. They break a hip, they break a femur, they break their forearm, they break their clavicle, they break their back, and that ultimately, for those over the age of 65 or 70, for most, leads to early death.
Ve sonuç olarak aslında bu düşmeye sebep olabiliyor ve kötü düşmelere sebep olabiliyor ve kalça kırığı gibi problemlerin açığa çıkmasına neden oluyor.
This is a video of two of my clients on their first day in training with me. They don't know that I'm recording them. I simply ask them to walk up to the front gate and back.
İlk gün çalışmaya başladığım kişiler bunları kaydettiklerini bilmiyorlar. Sadece öne doğru yürüyüp geriye gelmelerini istedim.
You can see the lumbering shifting from side to side, the short wobbly steps, the toes turned drastically out, the arms being utilized as balance and counterparts. This is an extremely short, small, unstable gait.
Yani küçük, e, stabil olmayan bir yürüyüş paterni. Ayaklar dışa doğru açık, kollar belli bir parametrede çalışmıyor ve gövde bir tarafa doğru eğiliyor.
And we jokingly kind of call this like a zombie walk, but it really is how you'd see in the movies as the zombies move about, creating extreme instability and potential for fall risk is quite high.
Genellikle biz buna biraz daha zombi yürüyüşüne benzer bir yürüyüş diyoruz ve burada da aslında düşme riski fazla oluyor.
And one other example here is one of our politicians here in the U.S. took a public fall. You can see his forward tilt of his posture, tight hip flexors, small little steps, and then how quickly he falls and goes down, gets a little bit of help back up, feels quite unstable, almost falls again as he starts to walk. Small, unstable little steps ultimately lead to injuries like this. Clients think that they have the opportunity to rescue these, that it won't happen as quick as it does. Most people say, though, I was on the ground before I know it. They don't even know it's coming. They're just down and they get hurt.
Ve burada nasıl düştüğünü görebiliyorsunuz ve çoğu kişi bunu önleyebileceğini düşünüyor ama genellikle hastalar bunu şu şekilde açıklıyorlar. Ben bir baktım yerdeyim, nasıl düştüğümü anlayamadım.
And there's one other view here you'll see of this one when he falls. And you can just see how small his gait is there, how wobbly from side to side, just buckling. And unfortunately, this happens with most of our aging population right now.
Maalesef bir sürü yaşlı olan bir şey bu.
All right, so one assessment that you can do with your clients is called the 10-step assessment. And I like to record this as well. So I want you to pretend that your view that you're getting of me, you're the recording camera, okay?
Sanki biz kamerada çekim yapıyoruz. 10 adımlık bir yürüyüş şu kaydetmemiz gerekiyor.
And we're going to start with a client. I've got a tape measure out. We're going to start with a client with their heels against the wall or at the starting line or wherever you want to put them. And from here, I won't be able to do all 10 steps because of the space, but you're going to just ask them, just walk. No other instructions. No, I'm assessing you. No, I need you to take as big a step as you can. You just have them stand here and say, walk. And ideally, they start to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And from that point, I'm going to measure whatever the distance is of their 10 steps.
Şimdi bu şekilde yandan not çekeceğiz. Nasıl yürüdüğü hiç önemli değil. Biz burada 10 adımlık bir kaydını almak üzere çekim yapacağız.
This is a good opportunity with the recording as well to show them where they were when you started and then train for 12 weeks and then record them again and show them after videos.
Ve öncesi sonrası videosunu kaydedip 12 hafta sonra tekrardan çekip gösterebilirsiniz.
You can have them do this multiple times and get a side view like you saw that I just did here. But then maybe a second or a third time where you get a front view, and as you see them walking, you can see any hitches or giddy ups or sways from side to side, and then one where they walk away from you. So you can see as they're walking, if they're swaying or if they're using their arms in any fashion for balance, as opposed to just regular contralateral walking that you would like to see with a regular gait.
Ve bunu hem yandan çektiğimiz gibi önden veya arkadan da çekip vücudunu nasıl hareket ettirdiğini, sağa sola doğru belirli paternler kullanıyor mu onu da görebiliriz.
And then take that 10-step measurement for easy math here. We're going to say that 10 steps equaled 30 feet. We would divide that 10 steps by 3. That's giving us, or excuse me, the 10 steps by 30 feet is going to give us 3 feet per average step. But what I want you to remember is that it doesn't mean that each step that they take is even in length. It's just giving you an average.
Ve burada da adım hesaplamasını şu şekilde yapabiliriz. Topuktan bir çizgi çekip 10 adım atıp 10 adım yaklaşık 30 fit olarak düşünürsek bunu 10'a böldüğümüz zaman 30 fiti yaklaşık bir ortalama 3 fitlik bir adım uzunluğu yakalıyoruz. Ama ortalama bu sadece. Her adım eşit olmayabiliyor.
So you may have someone that has a tighter hip flexor on one side, and even though with every step that they take, they're averaging 30 inches, this step right here with my right foot may be a average 30 inch, but this might be a 32 inch step, and this might be a 28, 32, 28, 32, 28. And every time still giving me the average of being even though one is a little bit longer, the other one being a little bit shorter. This isn't the perfect assessment, but it gives you a good starting point as to what their average is and then what it'll be ideally 3 months from now.
Ve bir tarafta örnek veriyorum kalça fleksör gerginliği varsa bir taraftaki ortalaması 32 fitse diğer taraftaki 28 olabiliyor. Bu tabii ki ortalama 30 olarak verilir. Ama iyi bir hesaplama olmamasına rağmen bile başlangıç için bize iyi bir veri veriyor.
All right. And then along with the walking gait, we have the timed up and go, the tug. So the way this one is performed is you're 3 meters away from your bench. We're going to give them a 3, 2, 1, go. We'll start a timer. They're going to go out and back. We're going to demo this in a moment. We're going to time that. We'll write it down, and then we're going to have them go the other direction.
Ve bir diğer hareketimiz timed up and go hareketi bu. Testi bu 10 fitlik 3 metrelik bir test. Oturarak başlıyoruz. 3, 2, 1 go şeklinde başlayıp ayağa kalkıyoruz. Konunun etrafında dönüyoruz. Tekrar oturuyoruz ve duruyoruz. Bunu diğer taraf için yapıyoruz aynı şekilde ve süreleri hesaplıyoruz.
Then we're going to perform the 30-second sit to stand and a 5 rep max sit to stand both for time.
Ve 30 tane sit to stance 30 saniyelik sit to stance 5 tekrarlık sit to stance yapıyoruz. Bunları zamana karşı yapıyoruz. 30 tane sit to stance ve 5 tane sit şeklinde. Hem güç hem de endurance ölçmek için.
We're going to test their grip strength as well. And then we're also going to use a pulse oximeter to test their oxygen content and their resting heart rate.
Kavrama kuvvetlerini ölçüyoruz. Aynı zamanda puls oksimetre ile beraber oksijen düzeyini ölçüp nabza bakıyoruz.
This all makes up our general sarcopenia screen. They can be done in 5 to 10 minutes with the average client.
Ortalama 5-10 dakika sürüyor bir kişi için.
So we're going to demo all these and I'll take you through them all, but just to show you the start here with the grip strength. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze, relax. We're going to have that individual hold their dynamometer out in front of them. Again, here's my dad, squeezing, squeezing, squeezing, and then returning. We'll give 2 or 3 attempts, write down pounds or kilos, and then also on the chart, show them where they are. Is this excellent, good, very good, fair, poor, etc. We want them to know where their score lies.
Ve burada kavrama kuvvetiyle beraber aslında kişiye bu sefer kategoride nerede olduğunu, iyi mi kötü mü, ortalama mı olduğunu söylüyoruz.
Dynamometers, you can get fancy ones like this. This is from InBody. We work with InBody often. Their dynamometer, real simple. You hit your on button, it pops on there. And then as you give a good squeeze, it'll give you your poundage. And then you can record again 2 or 3 attempts. There are other dynamometers that are, $15 to $20, not as expensive. But if you really want to have good, accurate scores, it is worth investing in a good one.
Dinamometresi kullanıyoruz. Bu el dinamometresiyle beraber bir ortalamayı yakalayabiliyoruz bu şekilde.
The first way to do this is by holding the dynamometer out in front of you. As you bring the dynamometer down to your side, you're going to give it a good squeeze, squeeze, squeeze, but make sure it doesn't touch your thigh. There is a way to push this against your hip and actually get quite a bit more effort out of it. So we want to hold it out in front, squeeze down to your side, and then there's your score that you can then record.
Bu şekilde önde tutup aşağı doğru götürdüğümüzde sıkıyoruz. Kalçamıza değmemesi gerekiyor.
The other option, and some people do better with this, is simply holding it at 90 degrees and squeeze, squeeze, squeezing right out in front of them. And when score again, 3 attempts, switch to the other side.
Bazı kişiler bu 90 derecelik dirsek fleksiyonda da yapabiliyor.
From there, we record, make sure they see their score, because we are going to give them a copy of this to take home. And I always tell them, hang it on the refrigerator or put it at your desk, put it somewhere where you can reference it and see those scores on a regular basis.
Verileri kaydedebiliyorsun. Ondan sonra verileri kişiye veriyorsunuz. Kişi evde görebileceği bir yere asıyor bunu.
What's really great about grip strength is it is a direct correlation, not a causation, but a direct correlation to sarcopenia. Grip strength itself is a proxy for overall strength. This is not, this is an acquired strength. It's not inherited. So the greater your grip strength is, for most people, shows that you're living a more active, more physical lifestyle, which ultimately leads to less of a lower mortality rate, of early mortality rate, where a weaker grip score shows that you're not as physically active, you're not doing as much, which leads to a earlier mortality rate.
Buradaki kavrama kuvveti aslında sizin var olan kuvvetiniz. Yani kalıtımsal bir şey değil. Ne kadar iyiseniz aslında mortalite seviyeniz de o kadar etkileniyor.
All right. Here is our sit to stand test. You'll see on average for men age 60 to 64, we're looking for at least 14 reps. For ladies, at least 12 reps. And then our timed up and go, we're looking for them to perform that timed up and go in less than 12 seconds. So if you're at home and you have a chair and you would like to do this with me, feel free to go ahead and stand up and we'll go together. We've got a chair or a bench, and then we're going to get a timer going here in just a second.
Burada oturmadan ayağa kalkma hareketi yapıyoruz. Bu oturmadan ayağa kalkma hareketinde belli bir süre tutuyoruz.
So we ask the client to start standing. Feet are set wherever they're comfortable to squat. I give them the 2 rules. You have to completely sit down, let the chair take your weight. You have to completely stand up to lock out your hips, because we do have 2 cheats. You'll have people that bounce off, and then you'll have people that don't go all the way up. So completely unload and then completely stand up.
Kişi burada tamamen oturup ondan sonra tamamen ayağa kalkacaktır. Bu önemli bizim için.
All right, so here we go. Everybody standing in 3, 2, 1, go. Sit down, unload, stand up. And we can do this, in a fairly competitive fashion, but just remind the client you're not doing this to break records. We just want to see how good you can do, how effective you can be, how efficient we can be. And you're also seeing how quickly can they turn over. If they're barely moving, if they're shifting side to side, if they have to push with their arms, these are all little cheats that they do. And time. So I think I had 15 in 30 seconds. That would, for me, be, a good passing score. And I would say not a fall risk.
Ve burada belli bir sekansta bu hareketi yapıp bunun süresini kaydediyoruz.
We would come back, write that score down. Also write down the height of the box or the bench that we used. So I have a 12-inch box plus 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. So that gives me 12, 14, 16, 18 inches in height. If I were a better squatter, I could take one of those away and maybe go a little lower or bring it back, bring it a little higher, wherever I'm comfortable.
Burada tabii ki seviyeleri iyi ayarlamamız lazım. Bendeki seviyeleri ayarlayabilecek 2 inçlik yükseltiler var.
Next is the timed up and go. We have our cone out here at 3 meters, 10 feet. I start seated, and as the coach, you can say, go whenever you're ready, or you can give them a 3, 2, 1, go, but you don't want to start the timer until they actually start the movement, okay? So I could say 3, 2, 1, go. As soon as I start to get up, I'm walking, I'm older, I struggle a little bit. So I get around that turn and I'm coming back. You can see I'm tilting a little forward. And then as soon as I get back to seated, I stop the timer. That took me 12 seconds. I turn from right to left. So I'm going to write that down, right to left, 12 seconds.
Şimdi sağdan sola doğru yaptı ve ayağa kalkar kalkmaz zamanı başlattı ve oturur oturmaz da zaman durdurdu. 12 saniye sürdü. Şimdi tam tersi tarafına yapması lazım.
I'll let them rest 20-30 seconds, and then again, 3, 2, 1, go. I come up, but I want to go from left to right this time, and maybe I've got a bum hip, and it's a little harder for me to turn this way. And then when I get here again, I've got to turn and then get myself back to seated. Okay, that took me 14 seconds this time. I'm going to say from left turning right, 14 seconds. We'll write that down.
Şimdi soldan sağa aynı şekilde 20-30 saniye denedikten sonra yaptı. O da 14 saniye sürdü.
And those times, ideally, as we do all of our proper hinges, our sit to stands, our carries, our rows, all of those efforts that we put in, improving the posterior chain, improving their posture, their gait, that time ideally should get faster as we train over the next 3 months into that post test.
Ve burada kişiliği çeşitli ölçümler yaptıktan sonra kaydediyoruz. Ondan sonra tekrardan bir sonraki ölçüme kadar antrenmanları yapıyoruz.
Oops. So here's our client Joyce performing her timed up and go. Remember, she had those hips that were a little bit crooked when she was doing her sit to stands. And then we're going to get her going the other direction. Look at those small wobbly little steps. Though she's fast, she's faster than the 12 seconds that's our cutoff line for your fall risk or not. Because of how unstable she is, we're still going to indicate her as a potential fall risk, just because of the small narrowness of her gait.
12 saniyeden az bir sürede yaptı. Ama Sinden kaynaklı hala düşme riski olduğunu söyleyebiliriz.
Remember the distance that we want in between their step, one of their foot lengths in between, and she is not even close to that.
Ve buradaki mesafeyi de yakalayamıyor.
And then our last one out of that, too, I don't have it featured here, but is your pulse oximeter. Simple, these are $15, $20. You place that on your finger, hit your button, and then that'll give you a readout here of your resting heart rate and your blood oxygenation level. So I'm at 95 on my O's and about 80 on my resting heart rate, making sense that I'm just getting done doing stuff that it's a tiny bit higher.
Burada seks satürasyona bakıyor. Satürasyonla beraber nabza bakıyor. Buradaki nabzları kaydediyor ve satürasyonu kaydediyor.
I do want to leave a little bit of time for some questions, so I put some extra information in here for you. If you want to work on improving balance and foot strength, as foot strength is really important to our clients' inability to fall down. They do make specific dynamometers that measure your toe strength and how much you can squeeze your toes down into the floor and not allow that little credit card to slide out from under your feet, giving you a toe strength measurement, just like we did the upper body hand grip strength.
Ve burada da parmakların kuvvetini ölçen cihazlar var genel olarak. Bunlara da ekstradan bakabilirsiniz. Ayak kuvveti ve ayaktaki güç düşme riski için oldukça önem arz ediyor.
And along in here, as I gave you a couple of other toe exercises that you can do, the Vel leaning foot drill, some towel drills, a couple other things that you can assess for foot strength and improving foot strength.
Ve gene parmak fleksibilitesi ve gücü için çeşitli bazı egzersizler var, görüyorsunuz.
And some additional drills that we do here for our foot strength is pushing the sled. The tank is one of the best, most athletic and more dynamic movements that we can do for our older clients, as their gait is much longer when they get to hold on to something like this. They get a lot of high toe break in their feet, like they're sprinting almost, and they can feel supported at all at the same time as they perform this movement.
Ve itiş hareketlerimiz var. Kişi burada adım uzunluğunu belli bir uzunlukta tutup belli bir itiş yapıyor ve bu yüke karşı bir itiş yapıyor. Bunu hem öne doğru hem geriye doğru da yapabiliyor.
This is more or less a loaded walker, if you will. They can feel quite stable and quite confident in pushing this, getting more muscular and longer gaits to hopefully not have them walk like they did there at the bottom.
Yani kişi bu yürüyüşle beraber daha güçlü, daha kaslı bir şekilde yürüdüğünü söyleyebiliyor.
I also have this chapter here that I wrote inside the Developing Power book. I will send that along with the slides of today, so you can all take a look into that. And it highlights some of my favorite exercises for developing power and some exercise progressions here for you, and gives you some additional instruction on those release lifts and everything else that we covered today.
Ve bu kitabın belli bir bölümünde bahsettiğim bazı egzersizler var. Bunu da göndereceğim size. Buradaki sunumda göreceksiniz.
And if you have any questions, I am happy to spend some time answering them now. I really appreciate everybody spending time with me. 2 hours here. I hope you learned some good things. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to get on here and share with you all.
Birkaç dakikamız var soru almak için. 2 saate yakın sürdü. Neredeyse 2 saat sürdü. Birkaç tane soru alabiliriz. Sorusu olan varsa mikrofonunu açabilir ve yazabilir.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's a very nice presentation.
Thank you, Engine. I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Massim,
Actually,
great job
they are
in translation, buddy. Good job.
they are really adaptable to at home even. So the
Yes.
people
Oh, for
can be
sure.
even at home, right?
Yeah,
Not the gym
absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a big takeaway for us is like most groups that I get in front of and I do a presentation, they'll say very, very similar, like this is good for my 20 and 30-year-old clients. And it really is. Like if they would train this way from early on all the way through, imagine how capable and how athletic and strong people would stay into their 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah. That should be a habit actually, because the brain is ignoring to some fancy exercise, but they are used to do like doing what we are doing in our daily life. You mean what then like sit to stand we do every day.
Everybody. Yeah, all of us. I mean,
Yeah.
that's very useful. And think too, like at a restaurant, you're not perfectly straight up and down. You got to get into a booth. You got to get out. You got to low cars. You've got,
Yeah.
odd angles. Like these are all challenges for our bodies as they get older. By staying really strong in these actions and these movements like we do here, it helps them and goes a long way and keeps them quite capable of being able to go do things. You get, clients, again, I don't mean to ramble, but we have clients here in the US. Our average American retires at 65 and our average death is at 72. So basically they get like 7 years of living where they're not working and their physical ability at that age is really, really poor. So most of them just kind of sit around until they die. And it's like, what did you do all this for? What did you save all this for if you can't go anywhere and you can't do anything? And it's like, go travel the world and go on hikes and go do things with your grandkids and go do all this, but they can't. They're just physically unable. And it's quite sad. This is why we do what we do, is to let people enjoy those golden years. I know I'm not giving Mazem a chance to translate any of this, but hopefully you'll be able to wrap it up for me here a little bit.
Sorry, I didn't hear it.
That's all good. So any questions?
Ben duydum şöyle diyor aslında. Diyor ki birçok insan Amerika'da 65 yaşına kadar çalışıyor. 72'sinde de ortalama ömrü 72'de bitiyor. 7 yıl aslında çok zor koşullarda hayatlarını geçiriyorlar. Çünkü fiziksel olarak inaktif bir yaşam sürüyorlar. O yüzden aslında bunları hayatı onların geneline yaygınlaştırmak, 40'ından sonra insanların hayatına yerleştirmek aslında yaşam kaliteleri açısından da çok önemli vesaire.
I think we don't have questions right now.
All good?
It
Okay.
looks like everything was
It means
clear.
it's a great presentation. Everything is clear.
Very good. Very good. All right, my friend. Well, I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thank you again for the chance to do this. I'll send you over the PDF for the slides
Yeah,
now.
that would be nice.
Yep, and the article as well.
Look-
And you can
Yeah,
send that out to
I
everybody.
hope we could do it in person like in 2027.
That would be good. Yes, as we talked about, we've got some family health issues we're dealing with this year, but hopefully
No,
next
it's
year
okay.
that would be great. I would love to
Yeah.
come out.
Even we see each other right now in online, it's fine. The
Yes.
people are getting the idea.
Yes, they are. I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. Thank
All
you
right,
so
everybody.
much.
Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
Ağzına
Thank you.
sağlık, çok
Thank you.
teşekkürler.
Rica ederim hocam.
Appreciate it.
Herkese iyi akşamlar. Görüşmek üzere.
Bye bye.